You are listening to the Novel Writing Podcast, episode 109. Grab a cup, cozy up, and let's get to writing. Today's episode is about different publishing avenues or different ways to publish your books, whether it's self-publishing, traditional publishing, hybrid, any of the other types that are in between all of those. That's what we're going to talk about today. And today we have Halie Fewkes Damewood again to break down all of those different types and just to understand what these things are in the publishing world.
All right, so we're just going to jump right in because there really are a lot of options when it comes to publishing. You know, once your book is finished, once you either maybe have or haven't gone through editing on it, this is one of the questions that I think comes up the most with writers that I'm talking to is, hey, I have a finished draft. I'm not really sure where to go next. And the answer is never straightforward. Like, I can't tell you which of these is the best for you because they all have different pros and cons. And so I kind of want to just run through a quick list of what your options are and kind of let you guys decide based on where you're at, which one's going to be the best for you. So the ones that we're going to cover today, we're going to talk about publishing with a big press, publishing with a small press. Both of those are traditional. We're going to talk about hybrid publishing, which is really just a rebrand of, of vanity publishing. We're going to talk about print on demand, ebooks, and offset print runs. And that really, I'm pretty sure, not audiobooks. You know what? We're not talking about audiobooks. That kind of covers like all the bases. If you guys want to know about audiobooks, that's going to be a whole different podcast. So let's start by talking about big press. There are 5 big traditional publishers. It's Penguin, it's Simon & Schuster, it's Macmillan. These are the guys who are like, they're going to get you like the big international contracts. This is probably your best shot if you want to get a movie made of your book one day. This is when you picture old school publishing, like where you would put your manuscript in the mail and then the publisher would come back to you and pay you big royalties and you could live off the paycheck. That's kind of what the big press is. It has changed a lot over the years. So even these days, if you get a big contract with a big press, it's not necessarily going to replace your day job, just to give you guys kind of, a frame of reference. But what's really cool is that they take a lot of the work off of your plate. So you do still have to do a lot of marketing of yourself, but they're the ones getting the distribution down. So you just get to walk through the airport and see your book on a book stand, and you didn't have to put it there. And there is something so great about that. And then every time somebody walks through that airport and purchases a copy, you're probably getting a little bit of that royalty. And there is something really, really cool about that. So that is what the big presses are all about. Now, the way that you get published through a big press, and again, this is traditional publishing, this is what we call traditional, you need to get an agent. So the problem with trying to get picked up by a big press is that everybody wants to get picked up by a big press. Okay, not everybody, but a lot. I'm talking like millions of people want their books published and put in airports all over the world. Like, how cool is that? So those big presses don't want to be reading 1 million letters a year from aspiring writers. So they only work with agents. So your job as a writer, if you want to get picked up by a big traditional publisher, is that you have to get an agent first to represent you. And then basically they go to those big presses and say, hey, I have this client. She's got the coolest book. You're going to love it. And then they try to work out a deal for you. Now, getting an agent is really tough. I'm just going to kind of tell you guys that up front. There's not a ton of them. For like the millions of writers that are out there, there's probably just a couple hundred agents that are out there to represent them. So it is extremely competitive to get an agent. We can honestly do an entire podcast about agents sometime. Like, I don't want to go into the entire spiel here. My best piece of advice, if you guys want an agent, is to go to a writing conference. That is the best place to meet them. That's the best place to secure a contract with them, get them to actually like you and potentially consider your work. And then if they pick you up, then they pitch your work to the big presses, and then you have that opportunity of maybe having a movie deal one day, maybe selling 100,000 copies, and you make a small percentage of that. Like, you're not taking away 30% of each sale by any means. It's going to be a very, very small percentage, but a small percentage of 100,000, 200,000, 1 million copies is still pretty exciting. So that is if you want to go with the big press, you have to get an agent. And it's a long process. I'll be honest with you guys. Like you're looking at several years. If you started now and everything went well, everything went perfectly, you got an agent pretty quick, they pitched it pretty quick, it was a really quick turnaround, you're still looking at several years until your book comes out. So just to be realistic with you guys, if you want to see your book on the shelf by next year, this probably isn't the avenue for you. The next thing that I want to talk about is small press. So not every publisher is Penguin and Macmillan, right? There are a ton of others out there, and a lot of them don't need agents, actually. Some of them might, but a lot of them you can query them directly. You can talk directly to editors from a smaller printing press. Again, that's something that you can do at writers' conferences, or you can query them, which is just sending them a letter telling them, hey, this is me, this is my project. I think it'd be great for you guys. And there's a range of what small presses are going to be able to do for you. Some of them might print a couple thousand copies and get them into local bookstores in your region. I would say that that's a pretty big win. If you get a small press who does a couple thousand copies and you get to see them in bookstores, that's pretty darn cool. And this is still traditional publishing, because it is still that layout of you wrote the book, you sent it to them, but they're doing a lot of the marketing, a lot of the distribution, most of the distribution. They're taking care of the businessy end of it, right? So that's why it's still traditional publishing, even though it's on a smaller scale. But like I said, the small presses, there's a range of what they can and will do for you. So there's the ones that, are going to print a couple thousand copies, and it's going to be awesome, and you are definitely a published author at that point, and it feels great. And there's some of them who are basically, they are doing self-publishing for you. And these are the ones that, if that's what you want to do, that's totally awesome. Like, some people don't want to create their own covers. They like the idea that somebody else is going to just tell them which editors to work with. But a lot of the times they're just kind of doing all the things that you could have done yourself, and they're taking a big old cut of it. And so those are the ones personally that it just wouldn't be my preference, because, well, I like that sort of thing. I like picking my own covers. I like working with editors that I know. But just so that you guys know, like, there is that range of the ones who are going to really get it out there for you. And there's some publishers out there who are still technically traditional, but they're really just doing all the things you could have done yourself. And so I want to move on next to talk about hybrid, but go ahead, Colleen.
Before we move on, the thing about, so this is going to tie in with our episode on Never Skip the Editor from a few weeks ago, where we're saying, make sure you work with a developmental, a copy editor, and a proofreader, and in that order. The thing is, if you're going to go with traditional publishing, you don't start that process until you're picked up by a publisher, because that publishing house is going to want you to work with their editors. So if you go through the process of getting your book developmentally edited and it's copy edited, and it's like you have a final finished draft and you're trying to pitch that, chances are you're going to have to go through a lot of reworking to work with those editors at that publishing house. So the advice that we've been giving through Tally Inc. to our authors in the programs that we run is, if you are solid on going traditional, don't go through the effort of hiring a developmental editor yet. Make sure you go through the querying process, like all of that stuff, if you're set on it. And if you choose down the line to switch your mind or change your mind and go to do self-publishing, then you can still do that process. But if you are dead set on traditional, whether it's big press or small press, those in-house editors are going to be the ones you work with.
I want to add on to that real quick. You might still want to do developmental first, because a lot of times the book might not be good enough to get picked up yet. The developmental edit is what really reworks the story and makes the story the strongest that it can be. So it's possible you might want to do developmental editing first. Like, because for me, when I first was trying to get an agent, my book was not good enough to get picked up, just bluntly. And it took years of editing and like reworking that story until it got to the point where actually multiple agents were like, hey, this sounds really, really cool. So you might want to do developmental editing. Like, if it's not getting the traction that you want, maybe you need to rework it with an editor. But that is very true. What Colleen's saying is, once you do get picked up, they will probably have a developmental editor that works with you. They will definitely have somebody who does copy editing and proofreading with you. So those are the ones. Definitely don't do those ones. Well, copy, maybe. Don't do any proofreading.
But I mean,
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, the thing is though, even if like, especially if you're on a tight budget, and we have several
Hmm.
authors who are on that as well, and they want to do developmental, but they just can't right now,
Hmm.
send your book through really vicious critique partners, because those will be the ones who
Hmm.
basically developmentally edit your book for you and you didn't have to pay them. So that is like another option. If you find people you trust who will be very honest in their feedback, but they're both writers and readers, and so they can
Hmm.
give you the kind of feedback that a developmental editor would, just from multiple perspectives.
And make sure that you are a vicious editor in return, because you got to pay them back for that. Not like in a revenge way, but like in a, like, honestly, you need to pay them back for what is very
Yes.
valuable.
Yes, that is the point of critique partnering, is that you are
Yes.
in a partner relationship. They read your stuff, you read theirs.
Exactly. So yeah, if you pitch it and you get picked up and they're ready to like do the editing with you, that is the ideal situation. But if you're pitching and you're not getting any traction, then maybe it's time to go look at getting some help through developmental editing before you go back to pitch again. But yes, that's a really good point. Like, they will have in-house editors who do a ton of that for you. So that's traditional, big press, small press. We're going to talk about hybrid publishing next, which is really, we used to call this vanity publishing. It's basically this idea that you are paying a company to do the publishing for you. And there is an extremely negative connotation around this in the writing world. And I'll tell you why that is. It's because a lot of times these hybrid slash vanity publishers are very dishonest about what they are and what they do. So I'll tell you a quick story from my experience. When I was 17, I had my first book done. I got on the wonderful World Wide Web and I typed in how to publish a book. And, one of the first things that came up was this, put in your email and we'll take a look at your book and let you know if we think it's good, and then we'll publish it for you. I was like, okay, well, that sounds right. That tracks. So I put in my email address and my phone number. Unfortunately, the mistakes that I made. Then I get a call like 3 days later. Like, I had to, of course, type out what my book was about. And I spent so much time like really crafting a very thoughtful explanation of what my book was. And, 3 days later, I get a call from the company and they're like, oh, Halie, your book sounds so cool. So cool. We have to publish this for you. And I'm like, oh, thank you. I always thought so. I mean, obviously, Colleen's laughing. And so I'm like, well, yeah, this makes perfect sense. And then they're like, okay, so here's our publishing packages. The premium package for $10,000, we will publish 2,000 copies of the books, and then we'll market them to two different bookstores for you. And then we'll do all this. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize you wanted me to pay you. And they're like, oh, you don't worry, like, you will get that 10,000 back once the books sell. Like, it's just a small investment up front. And so I went through this whole dance of like I was 17, but I wasn't dumb. Like, I knew that this wasn't right. And they would call. Oh, they were relentless. They would call every week and be like, Halie, you have to publish this book. It's so good. And I got to the point I was like, really? Like, what was it about? What was the main character's name? Like, I sent the first couple chapters. You must have read them. And they didn't. They don't care. They tell everybody that. They tell everybody that their book is great because they want to make $10,000 off of you. So this is why hybrid and vanity presses have such a negative image in the writing community, is that they're very dishonest up front. Not all of them. I should say that. Not all of them are. But they kind of make it sound like they're going to make your dreams come true, and really they just want to make 10 grand off of you, and you have no guarantee that their marketing package, with, I stress the air quotes on that, you have no guarantee that that's going to be good. So, but here's the thing. Hybrid presses can be good. There are certain ones that, like, they're here to help you with services. They're here to give you realistic prices and say, "Hey, if you pay us $10,000, we will print the books for you. We will give this, like, we'll get them out to this many bookstores. We'll help you with this part of it." The ones who are honest about it, they're not a problem, because at that point you're just paying for a service. You're just paying somebody else to print the books for you. And I can tell you guys, as somebody who has gone through the extensive process of printing, tens of thousands of copies, that's actually very enticing to me. the idea that I could just pay somebody else to do it. That's just business. There's nothing wrong with that if that's what you choose to do. And they really can help you. It's the same as anything else in publishing. You have to get a trustworthy one. And if they're on the phone trying to call you 3 times a week, I would say that's probably not the one that you want to go with. But I kind of just want to debunk this idea that all vanity presses are bad, because they're not. But I do also want to give you guys the realistic vision of what they are, which is that if a publisher is calling you, or even if, even if they're not super pushy about it, if they're asking you for money, they are not a traditional publisher. That is a service that you are paying for, and it's different. It's not, you can't guarantee that they're going to do well for you. It, like, unless you're making royalties, unless they're footing the bill for everything and then paying you, then it's a hybrid press or a vanity press. It's not traditional publishing.
So for the hybrid publishers who are good, are
Uh-huh.
they going to include things like editing in their service lineup? Or is that something that writers should still invest in outside of the service base? Like, you're going to print 10,000 of my books and get it into bookstores.
It really depends on the press. A lot of them do. So a lot of them will say, okay, we have a whole package for you that includes editing, it's developmental and proofreading, or pay this price and get developmental and copy and proofreading, or pay this price and get all editing included, including 3 different rounds of edits, and plus we'll do your printing, plus we'll do your distribution, plus we'll do your marketing. Like, you're paying for each part of what they offer, and every company's different. And I did actually use a hybrid publisher for a little while. For it was just such bad timing. It ended up not being a good experience, but I don't know how much of that was just the timing of it. I mailed, so you guys know that I print my own books, so I didn't use them for that, but distribution is really tough. And I was just like, I would love to hire somebody to do this for me, to call bookstores, to take care of, like, I just wanted to ship them. I shipped them 2 full pallets of books. I don't remember how many it was, like maybe 1,000 books or so. And I said, hey, and I paid for their marketing package where they were going to reach out to all these bookstores, and then when the bookstores were interested, they would mail them the books. And if anything went wrong, like, they would take care of it. Like, the returns would come back to them, because I don't want to be doing that from my house. And unfortunately, they received the books right around the beginning of this year called 2020, which was right before everything shut down. And so it ended up being a really negative experience, because they did deliver technically on what they said they would have. Yes, they did call all the bookstores that they said they would, but all of those bookstores were closed. And so it ended up really not going super well, and we didn't end on super great terms. But if it hadn't been for those extenuating circumstances, I don't know that that would have been such a terrible experience. So just know that that is what hybrid publishing is you are paying for services. Just be aware of that. It's not traditional publishing, but that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it. And if that's what you want to do, then it is a totally viable option, as long as you understand that that is who you're working with, and that they are in it to make a profit off of you, not off of the belief that they think your book is great, because they don't care. It's just, that's the reality.
Okay, before
I
we
do.
move on to the other stuff,
Yeah,
my
go
last
ahead.
thing on traditional big press, small press, hybrid is to always read your contract in detail. And if you need to get it
Yeah.
reviewed by a lawyer, get it reviewed by a lawyer, because those
Mm-hmm.
things are ironclad.
They are. They absolutely are. And I mean, Colleen can tell you, I'm big on, like, getting contracts reviewed by lawyers. Like, they are binding, and they last a really long time, you guys. And it's about, like, that is your money. That is, money is a big deal. So if it's something that has, like, really long-term terms, I think a lawyer is a really good idea. But if it's something, actually, I didn't get my hybrid one reviewed, and we, like, in the end, there were, like, some issues where, like, I had other authors reaching out to me, and they were like, hey, my name is so and so, and we used the same hybrid publisher, and they sent me a bunch of your books on accident. So, like, things came up of, like, well, there was nothing in the contract for what to do when that happens. So it wasn't ever, like, a big enough deal that I was like, oh, I should have had a lawyer. But It is good, even if it's not a lawyer, have a friend or your dad or somebody review it with you so that you can get somebody else's input. And I guess the last thing I'll say about contracts is you guys should know that you can always amend a contract. All right. If they say, oh no, these are the terms, these are the only terms, I'd be pretty wary of that, honestly. Because I don't know, there is no such thing as a contract that can't be amended. The only thing is that there can be companies that refuse to amend them. And I'd be just kind of wary if you're working with someone who's like, nope, that's the contract, your concerns are not valid. There's something to be concerned about if that's what's going on. But let's go ahead and move on to the next one. So we've talked about traditional publishing, big and small presses. We've talked about hybrid / vanity publishing. The next is self-publishing, which is super exciting. And this is where we're going to talk about kind of the different types of printing. So print on demand is what I would say 98% of authors in America do. And it's really easy, you guys. You could literally publish a book this weekend if you haven't already. If you're new to this, all you have to do is upload files. You have to have a cover file and you have to have an inner file, and they have to be formatted correctly. But as long as your book is written, all you have to do is upload those files to either Amazon or Ingram Spark or Lulu. There's a host of different companies that do this print on demand. But the idea of it is that it's really easy because you upload the file and then anybody can go to Amazon and buy your book. I can go buy your book for $20. Amazon just prints one copy and sends it to me. And then you'll make a couple bucks off of it, which is cool. And, Amazon keeps the rest, but you didn't have to put out thousands of dollars up front to print 1,000 copies. Like, it's really easy, and it actually doesn't really cost anything. As long as the cover is done and the book is done, the actual publishing can be totally free, and you just make a couple bucks on every book that is sold. And I actually really lump ebooks in with print on demand publishing. I don't even really separate these out into two different buckets because anytime you're doing print on demand, it is so easy to set up the ebook at the same time. You just upload the same file with a slightly different format, and it's almost the exact same thing of anybody can go to Amazon and buy your book in ebook, and you will make a couple of bucks and Amazon keeps the rest. And same thing, you didn't have to put in huge money up front, huge time up front, huge anything. It's very, very easy. So the barrier to success in print on demand publishing is not that it's hard to get published, it's that it's hard to make sales. That is where the harder part comes in is, okay, you have to understand that just because your book is on Amazon does not mean that they are going to give you any marketing whatsoever. I mean, you can upload a book this weekend and 6 months go by, you could still have zero sales. Like, there is no guarantee that you're going to make any sales at all. Actually, I'd be much more willing to guarantee that you probably won't if you're not doing anything marketing wise. So this is what, everything has a trade-off, right? So with print on demand books, publishing's not hard, but like making the sales is. Whereas with traditional publishing, it's the opposite. Like, getting in the door, getting the agent, getting the contract is really hard up front. But then once that part's all done, they take care, the sales roll in, and that's not your responsibility. So you have to pick your difficult. Where do you want the difficulty to be? Do you want to be upfront, getting the contract with the traditional publisher, and then it's, kind of clear sailing after that? They take care of all of the actual marketing, distribution, that stuff. Or do you want your difficult to be after the publishing is done? Because that part is super easy. And then the difficult part is, okay, now how do I make the sales? So those are like the trade-offs, the big trade-offs between traditional publishing and self-publishing. Now with print on demand books and ebooks, here's kind of where I'm going to break self-publishing into two sections. So with print on demand books and ebooks, you're getting the same quality as all 98% of the other authors who are doing this exact same thing. And I guess I should kind of say 98 is just a number I'm throwing out there, just kind of from my own experience, from people that I know, from everyone who I know who's publishing. you basically they are coming out with more options now where you can get hardcovers, and I think you can even get some foiling on them sometimes, but then they're like really expensive. So a lot of you guys know that I do my books through Kickstarter publishing, where I print thousands of copies at a time so that I can have different covers. I can have bells and whistles like embossing and foil printing and jackets that are shiny and covers that are shiny under the jackets. I do that by doing really, really large print runs. And this is called offset printing. So this is the difference, kind of the two different types of self-publishing that I will say are out there is there's print on demand slash ebooks, like those all go together. And then there's offset printing where you're doing thousands of copies at a time. And the cool part about that is that it costs less per copy to make them. So for me, I can probably print in the quality that I'm getting on my covers. I can probably get my price down to about the same price that somebody who's buying a print on demand book has to pay for their book. The difference is, like, my cover is going to stand out more because it has shiny letters, but I also had to invest $10,000 up front. So that's where your trade-off is between those two, is how much, how much do you want to invest? And for me, when my first book came out, I've been working on it for 12 years. It was my baby at that point. And so I was willing to, honestly, I would have taken any bank loan in the world to be able to have those shiny letters on the front, because it just meant that much to me. But if that's not something that you want to do, if you're not willing to take a $10,000 bank loan and run a massive Kickstarter campaign that takes all your time and all your energy, like, if writing is just something that you want to be a side hobby, which that is totally great. You could go publish this weekend and just print 50 copies, and you don't have to do all of the dance that I do to do, the massive quantities. So that's kind of where I say with self-publishing, there's really those two different options of, do you want to do giant print runs where you have to fill your whole garage, pay 10 grand up front? Like, this is the one that consumes your life. If it's like, if this is what you want your full-time job to be, this is the one you want to do, is the offset. If it's a little bit more like a side hustle or a hobby or something that you don't want to dedicate your entire life to, print on demand makes publishing super accessible so that people who are good writers can still get their stuff published and get it out there to the readers so that, everybody has a chance to read it. And those are, those are really the main types of self-publishing. And then, like I kind of mentioned, there's audiobooks, but that's just another format. It's just another kind of, you could do audiobooks through traditional, you can do them through self-publishing, you can do them through hybrids even. It's just one more format of how you can release books, but it doesn't really affect everything else that we've talked about. It's just kind of like one extra thing that you can add on top of whatever other kind of publishing that you've done. So, Colleen, do you have any questions? I feel like I kind of blasted through the self-publishing section pretty quick.
I mean, self-publishing by itself could be its entire own episode, and we probably should do one just on self-publishing, because I think that is probably where most of our authors and most people listening to this are going to look, is because that is the easiest option to go with, even if there is a bunch of different steps and stuff in front of it. But yeah, I mean, that's a really great breakdown of all of those different types. And I think we're good.
Okay. Well, I mean, I feel like I got through everything that I wanted to tell you guys, because the thing is, there's no right or wrong answer when you say, like, what should I do next? It really depends on your preference. How much of your life do you want to dedicate to this? And where do you want your difficult to be? Do you want your difficult to be up front in like trying to get the contract, or do you want your difficult to be after the publishing is done when you're trying to get the sales? And and then back to that question of how much of your life do you want to dedicate? If this is your baby and the thing that matters the most to you in the world is that you have shiny silver letters on the cover, you might want to do offset printing, or you might want to go for that big press, right? Whereas, or hybrid, whereas if you're like, you know what, this is one book and I'm going to write 3 more next year, and I'm going to write 3 more the next year, and you just want to bust them out, you might be looking at a small press, or you might be looking at print on demand, or you might be looking at hybrid. There's a lot of options depending on just what is important to you and how much of your life you want to dedicate to it and where you want your difficult to be. But those are really, the 5/6 big things that you need to know about publishing and what all of your options are.
All right. That is it for today's episode. Thank you for joining us. And remember, your first draft is supposed to be garbage. Thanks for listening to the Novel Writing Podcast. If you're ready to stop struggling and start finishing your novel, check out the 60-Day Novel Writing Challenge. It's a step-by-step program designed for solo writers to complete their first draft with clarity and focus. Visit the link in the description to learn more.